I live a joyful life with my beloved husband, Edward, whom I adore with all my heart. However, a shadow has cast itself over our otherwise blissful existence as we struggle to conceive a child. The idyllic life we shared took an unexpected turn when I discovered Edward laughing joyfully with someone unexpected in a place he shouldn't have been. My name is Anna, and I'm 28 years old. Edward and I have been happily married for 4 years. We initially met through a friend's introduction, bonding over our shared passion for travel. After 1.5 years of dating, Edward proposed and we embarked on our marital journey. Despite our harmonious relationship, a concern has been growing within me regarding our inability to conceive. Our desire for children is strong, and we've often discussed having 2 kids since our early days as a couple. Faced with the challenges of infertility, I approached Edward, suggesting we explore testing and fertility treatments. Many of my friends who married around the same time have already become mothers, causing a tinge of jealousy and a sense of being left behind. Edward, acknowledging our shared concern, proposed patience, stating that children are blessings that will come in due time. While I understood his perspective, the pressure of age and societal expectations lingered in my thoughts. Edward, empathetic to my worries, recognized the multifaceted concerns women face, balancing age, career, and the challenges of raising children. Our discussion led to a clear agreement: if we haven't conceived by the time I turn 29, we will undergo testing and consider fertility treatments. This deadline provided a sense of relief, and I expressed gratitude for Edward's thoughtful proposal. With our plan in place, we continued our conversation over tea and decided on the second week of August for our summer vacation. As usual, we eagerly planned our trip, finalizing flight tickets and accommodations. However, just 7 days before our departure, Edward, wearing an awkward expression, apologetically informed me that he couldn't join me on the trip. Despite my excitement for the upcoming vacation, Edward's unexpected revelation left me disappointed. I stood there in disbelief, unable to comprehend Edward's words. "You can't go? What are you talking about? We're supposed to leave for the trip in 7 days. How can you not go? Why? How?" Frustration took over as my mind raced to make sense of the situation. Edward explained that there was a problem at one of the company branches, and his boss, who was supposed to go, collapsed due to overwork. Now, Edward had to step in to help. While I understood that work complications are inevitable, I couldn't shake the unease. "If that's the case, you should have discussed it with me earlier. This problem has been ongoing, hasn't it? There must have been a possibility that you'd have to go in place of your boss. Why didn't you tell me?" Filled with a mix of anger, sadness, and regret, I couldn't hold back my emotions. Edward admitted that he was initially scheduled to go but had been given a break as his boss decided to handle it. "I'm really sorry." "You're absolutely right, Anna. It's my fault for not communicating with you about it." Edward apologized once again, and tears welled up within me. In frustration, I threw down the items in my hand and retreated to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. Despite knowing I shouldn't act like a child, my heart was in turmoil. I cried uncontrollably, eventually falling asleep. When I woke up the next morning, my head throbbed from the previous night's tears. Venturing into the living room, I found Edward sleeping alone on the sofa. Seeing him curled up on the small 2-seater, guilt overwhelmed me. Softly, I called out to him. "Edward, wake up. It's morning." He stirred, looking slightly dazed, and sat up awkwardly. "Good morning, Anna," he said. "I'm really sorry about last night. I know you didn't do it on purpose, and it's because of work. My behavior was terrible. I'm sorry." Tears welled up again as I apologized for my immaturity. Edward gently stroked my head and reassured me, saying it wasn't my fault. "I'm really disappointed, but I'll do my best on the business trip." "Will you support me?" he asked. I nodded, expressing hope for a quick resolution. Despite the disappointment and the incurred cancellation fee, Edward assured me he'd handle it himself. He then asked, "What will you do, Anna?" When Edward asked, I considered it honestly. "I think it would be boring without you, Edward." So I'm thinking about canceling mine too. Since getting married, it's not like Edward never went on business trips. When he was away on business, I was busy with my work, so I didn't feel lonely. But being at home all day on a day off and not having Edward return home felt like I would get lonely. I'm thinking about contacting Emily. It's been a while since we last met. If she's available, I'd like to hang out with her. Edward responded. Oh, that sounds good. It would be nice if you could meet her after a long time. And like that, Edward and I made up, getting ready for the day and turning the dinner I had planned for Edward last night into our breakfast. We headed off to work. During lunch, I reached out to my friend Emily, whom I hadn't talked to for a long time. Emily has been my friend since high school, and despite attending different colleges, our friendship continued, meeting up even after entering college. I know someone perfect for you, Anna. Would you like to meet him once? This is what Emily said when she introduced me to Edward. Spending time with Edward, who had the same hobbies as me and was a great talker, was enjoyable. Emily was happy when I reported we were getting married, and she even cried at the wedding. Emily, long time no see. Are you doing well? I sent Emily a message after a long time. Anna, I'm doing great. It's been a while. Is something hot? You didn't have a fight with Edward, did you? I laughed a bit at the laughing, crying emoji Emily put in after that sentence. I remembered Emily's words that since she introduced me to Edward, I could talk to her about anything. But for now, we've made up, and there's no need to go into detail. With that in mind, I dodged around the issue but moved on to the main topic. We had a bit of a spat, but it's all good now. More importantly, I was thinking I'd like to see you again. It's been a while. Are you free? Emily responded. Oh, so that's what happened. I'm sorry, Anna. I'm booked for this holiday. Actually, I have a boyfriend now, so I plan to spend the holiday with him. I'm really sorry. It's a shame that we couldn't meet, but I was thrilled with the happy news from Emily. Congratulations to Emily. I felt warm and fuzzy, as if happiness had come to me while I responded to her. Oh, is that so? Congratulations. If Emily is happy, I'm happy. It's a pity we can't meet, but have fun with your boyfriend. Let's meet again some other time, no matter what. Seeing the acknowledgement stamp from Emily that arrived later, I smiled. If my friends are happy, then I am too. In the end, I decided to go back to my hometown for this long holiday. I immediately contacted my parents, who live about 2 hours away by car, to meet up sometime during the holiday. We decided on the third day, and I was set to visit my hometown after a long time. Your dad is also looking forward to seeing you. Be safe when you come here. Upon receiving the message from my mom, I was delighted at the prospect of seeing my parents after such a long time. Then, after a while, the first day of the long holiday arrived. Well, I'm off. Have a relaxing holiday. I may not be able to reply to messages very frequently. I'm sorry. I smiled and replied to Edward, who seemed apologetic. Yeah, take care. Don't worry. Apart from visiting my parents, I have no other plans, so I'm intending to just chill. It's work. It can't be helped, so don't worry about it. After waving and smiling goodbye to Edward, after swiftly tidying up following breakfast, I completed my usual housework on the first day of the holiday without Edward. I decided to tackle the neglected areas, finding solace in the act of cleaning and taking occasional breaks. Around noon, I received a message from Edward, announcing his safe arrival. I sent him a picture of the freshly cleaned room, and he encouraged me to take breaks, displaying a wry smile in my mind. Assuring him I was taking breaks while working diligently, I encouraged him in return. The day continued with more cleaning, eating leftovers, taking a bath, and eventually, I sent Edward a goodnight message as I lounged in bed, periodically checking my phone. The next day, waking up at the usual time without setting an alarm, I considered going back to sleep but opted to get up. I greeted Edward with a morning message, and he responded, acknowledging the challenges he was facing. Despite feeling lonely, I remained cheerful in my messages, offering mutual encouragement. After a conversation with Edward, I turned on the TV and came across a special feature on trendy summer hairstyles. Deciding to get a haircut, I booked an appointment at my regular salon and headed out. The hairdresser complimented the new look, and I left feeling light and refreshed. Thinking about new clothes to complement the haircut, I extended my trip to a department store an hour away by car. While perusing the store, I unexpectedly spotted Edward with a woman wearing a hat, pushing a baby carriage. Shocked and confused, I couldn't comprehend why Edward, who had canceled the trip due to a sudden business trip, was there with a baby carriage. In my bewilderment, I raised my voice, questioning the situation, but received no answers. Panicking, I hid behind an information board, avoiding being seen by Edward and the woman. Eavesdropping, I overheard Edward's tender conversation with the woman and the baby, leaving me more perplexed. Summoning the courage to approach them, I called out to Edward, questioning the presence of the child in the stroller. Both Edward and the woman in the hat stopped abruptly, and the air was filled with tension. Disregarding the two, I continued to speak, pressing Emily with questions. "When did you have a child? The boyfriend you mentioned in your messages, is it Edward? Won't you tell me, Emily?" The person who turned around after removing her hat was indeed Emily. She smirked at me with a nasty smile, and even Edward, perhaps resigned, turned around with a sigh, pushing the stroller. I approached the stroller and peeked inside to find a little girl sleeping. "Isn't she adorable? Her name is Jessica. She's 4 months old," Emily said with a triumphant look, squatting down next to the stroller and proudly stroking the child's cheek. "I'll tell you since you're probably curious. Just like you thought, this is Edward's child." Her confirmation was a shock to me, someone who loves children and has been struggling to have one. The news devastated me, stirring a mix of emotions, sadness, regret, and more. "Why is it you two, and since when?" My voice trembled with the weight of the revelation. "It's only natural," Edward confessed without a hint of guilt. Emily, looking triumphant, continued, revealing something unbelievable. "You know, after I introduced Edward to you, Anna, I realized my feelings. I truly regretted it. So before you two got married, I confessed to him that I could even be his second choice, and he accepted me." As Emily spoke with a dreamy expression, she seemed like a completely different person. "I thought about breaking up with you and marrying Emily, but you're the CEO's daughter after all. If I married you as the son-in-law, I could take over the company and do whatever I want. I could just divorce you," and Emily agreed to wait until we got divorced. Edward then added, "Indeed, my father runs a small company. When we were getting married, there were talks about Edward being the successor. Eventually, he told me with a smile that I would follow in my father-in-law's footsteps for our future." The image I had of the Edward I loved began to crumble. Edward's shocking revelation continued. "I thought it wouldn't be right to have a child with you, Anna. I have a responsibility towards Emily and her child. Nobody in their right mind would be happy to hear that." Emily, showing a proud face, delivered something even more shocking. "When I heard that, I was really happy. I thought he loved me." She hooked her arm through Edward's, smiling happily. Faced with this betrayal, my sadness and regret began to dissipate, replaced by anger. Distressed that I couldn't have a child, I found no comfort in the fact that Edward was making a child with my friend behind my back. This is the most profound betrayal I could ever experience, and I will never find it in my heart to forgive Emily or Edward. Just as I was about to address the situation, revealing you as a significant talker while engaging in an affair, my dad and mom were unexpectedly present. The expressions on their faces held more anger than I had ever witnessed before, almost resembling demons with their sudden appearances. Edward began to panic at the sight of his father-in-law and mother-in-law. Edward's face turned as pale as a ghost, and Emily also appeared awkward and frustrated in the unfolding events. "Why are you here all of a sudden, father-in-law? You're never allowed to call me that again. I'll never forgive you for hurting my daughter like this," I exclaimed. My mom's gentle presence made my eyes well up with tears, and I apologized for them witnessing the situation. As whispers circulated us, people began to crowd around, commenting on the man being the worst and the woman being strange. We decided to change the location, and as we moved to a restaurant on the top floor of the department store, my parents requested a private room. Little Jessica was already asleep, allowing us to have a more peaceful discussion. Dad initiated the conversation as soon as we sat down and ordered drinks. "You had quite a lot to say earlier. How do you plan on taking responsibility? Divorce, I presume?" he inquired. Edward seemed to be searching for an excuse, but nothing suitable came to mind. My anger and shock subsided with my parents' arrival, and I surprisingly felt calm. Dad speculated on the possibility of Edward getting fired from his job, depending on Paul, the CEO. Paul despised cheating and held people accountable for such behavior. Paul, a close friend of my dad, had made an offer for Edward to join our company, starting with HR and rotating through various departments for experience. Amid the tense situation, Edward pleaded with my dad, realizing the severity of potentially losing his job and livelihood. My mom intervened, stating, "Emily, this is no joke. Even if you're in debt, you have to make it work. You made a move on your friend's husband. You love him, don't you?" My mom's cold gaze and evident rage as a protective mother were palpable. She emphasized her understanding of the love for her child, even in adulthood, and declared her unwillingness to forgive anyone who hurts me. Emily, with a pale face, was visibly shaken, realizing the consequences of their actions. "You brought this on yourselves, didn't you?" my mom pointedly remarked. "Certainly, I will report this matter to Paul, the CEO, and you will definitely bear the consequences of the division of property." "Are you seriously considering demanding the division of property? You must be joking, right?" Edward shouted at me upon hearing my dad's words, but I interrupted his protests. "I'll be taking it from you, Edward. It's only fair, isn't it? You've been betraying me since before we got married. I thought Emily was a dear friend, and I loved you, Edward, but it seems you two didn't feel the same. I don't need to worry about people who don't care about me. I'll make sure the two of them take responsibility for what they've done. If I don't, my feelings will never settle, so I won't hold back. I'll request significant compensation too." "Let's go, Mom and Dad," I declared to my parents, standing up with a check in hand. "I'll make you pay. You probably won't be able to enjoy tea in a restaurant anymore. This is your last luxury," I added, leaving the private room with my parents and leaving the two of them in silence. Following that, I obtained a referral from my dad to a divorce lawyer and initiated the divorce process. I first reported the situation to Paul, who, upon hearing the story, was enraged. "What the hell? He's an unbelievable guy. I can't believe he was doing such a thing, using business trips as an excuse. Anna, you must have been in a lot of pain." "Don't worry, I'll make sure Edward takes responsibility," Paul assured me. Later, I learned that Edward's punishment resulted in a demotion since Paul couldn't dismiss him outright. The company's policies prevented firing employees for having affairs, and Emily, being an outsider, added another layer of complication. Paul expressed his regret, stating that it was the only punishment he could impose. Despite not resulting in dismissal, Edward suffered considerable damage due to the incident becoming known among employees. Emily, on the other hand, had quit her job upon becoming pregnant, living off support from Edward and working from home. However, she was disowned by her parents after seeking their help. Receiving aggressive messages from Emily blaming me for her situation, I responded in a cold manner, deciding to cut off direct communication. While Edward persistently begged for forgiveness and reconciliation, it became evident that he saw Emily and Jessica as nothing more than they were. "I'm really sorry, Anna. Believe me, the only one I love is you. Please, let's start over," he pleaded. However, I was incredulous at his words. Where in the world would a wife consider getting back together with a husband who cheated with her friend and had a child? I no longer loved him at all and had no desire to reconcile. He should try hard as a husband and father for Emily and their child. Despite persistent phone calls, I insisted that all communication go through my lawyer, mirroring the arrangement with Emily. With support from those around me, I successfully finalized the divorce with Edward a month later. I opted to take a break at my parents' house for a while. Naturally, I insisted on the division of property and compensation from Edward. With that settlement, Edward found himself in debt, a consequence that felt justified. Around the time the divorce was finalized, Edward chose to voluntarily resign from the company. It seemed he found it challenging to continue working there, evident in his recent anxious behavior. While surprised by this revelation from Paul, the reason for his demotion was his widely known affair within the company. If I were in his shoes, I would have left the company immediately. Nonetheless, Edward's ability to remain at the company after the demotion, in some way, showcased his remarkable mental strength. Emily, it appeared, moved into the rental apartment where Edward and I used to live. However, given its relatively high cost, Edward, unemployed and in debt, couldn't afford it, resulting in their prompt eviction. Their heated arguments, audible from outside, reached a crescendo along with the cries of a baby, prompting police intervention. According to a former friendly resident, no one had seen the two of them since they were taken away in a patrol car. Several months after the divorce, I started living alone near my parents' home. After adjusting to this new pace of life, I received a letter from Emily's mother via my lawyer. The letter contained an apology to me and provided information about Emily's subsequent actions. After leaving the apartment, Emily and Edward moved to an older, more affordable place. Even if Edward managed to secure a job, he struggled to sustain it and eventually resorted to alcohol, leading a life plagued by alcoholism. On the other hand, Emily faced challenges securing employment as a mother with a small child. Recognizing she couldn't raise a child in such circumstances, she left Jessica at her parents' house and disappeared. Since then, there has been no contact with Emily and Edward, leaving their current activities unknown. Emily's parents, being elderly, plan to arrange for Jessica to be adopted by a childless couple. In a heartfelt message, they wished for Jessica's happiness, emphasizing that she would undoubtedly be happier in a different environment than being raised by Emily and Edward. The responsibility, they asserted, lies with Emily and Edward. As I gazed at the enclosed photo of Jessica, my sincere wish was for her genuine and lasting happiness.